You can go to every practice, do every workout, lift weights with your team, and still hit a plateau with your 2K erg score. And if you don't do these three things, chances are you're gonna stay stuck. It's not about you being lazy or weak or not working hard enough. An erg plateau is usually a sign that something important is missing or misaligned. Today, I'm gonna break down why erg scores plateau, and more importantly, the three things that actually fix them so you can stop guessing what to do and start making real progress. This video is for high school rowers who are chasing a faster 2K erg score, and for parents who are trying to understand why progress has stalled even though the work's being done. If we haven't met yet, I'm Kristin. I'm an 8-time national team rower and Olympian for Team USA turned online erg coach. Since 2013, I've worked with hundreds of high school rowers and their families all over the US, plus Australia and Canada. I make these videos so you have clear, trustworthy guidance in a sport that often feels confusing, and so athletes can reach their full potential, because I know firsthand how powerful that can be. If this all sounds helpful to you, feel free to subscribe so you can see more of what I put out. So here's the biggest misconception I see. Most people assume an erg plateau means the athlete needs to try harder or work harder. In reality, plateaus are rarely about effort. They're usually about something being misaligned in the athlete's approach. Things like mindset, goal setting, pacing, and identity all play into this. If effort alone dropped erg scores, every rower all over the world training 6 days a week would be improving nonstop, and we know that's not the case. Reason number one, pressure to PR. The first major reason erg scores plateau is pressure to PR on erg test day. This is incredibly common in motivated high school rowers. It shows up most often in athletes who actually perform really well in practice. They hit strong splits in their workouts, they handle the volume well, they know that they're fit. But then 2K day comes and the result doesn't match what they did in training. So if you're hitting good scores in practice but not on 2K day, it's not a fitness problem, it's a pressure problem. Pressure to PR almost always comes from external expectations. That could be pressure from parents, coaches, teammates, college coaches who've told you you have to hit a certain score to be recruited, recruiting timelines that feel like they're compressing by the day, or even comparison to other rowers. Even when no one is saying anything directly to you, you might think to yourself, everyone's watching me, or my coach expects me to PR, my parents will be so disappointed if I don't do well on this test, or I have to hit a 720 to get recruited to my dream school. This pressure on 2K day often feels confusing to athletes because in practice, the pressure just isn't there in the same way. Training feels safe. The stakes are much lower. Yeah, you might be scored on that workout, but it's not the test that determines everything about your future. In practice, there's room to learn, to try things. Whereas on test day, everything feels final. The stakes are higher, and your nervous system responds accordingly. When external pressure is really high, your body will shift into protection mode. You'll feel your breathing tighten, you'll feel your pacing become more reactive, and you'll see your decision-making get rushed. Your focus turns to avoiding failure rather than pursuing excellence. You're thinking about what the result means about you rather than staying in your strategy and in your plan. And what typically happens is athletes either go out way too fast, or they try to force a result, or they tighten up, or all three of those things. And race day ends up feeling totally different than practice. And the splits reflect that. What actually fixes this is you changing the meaning of test day. A 2K is not the be-all, end-all thing that tells you about your worth as an athlete or your potential or your effort. It's simply a snapshot of how you're doing at this moment. The more we can minimize how big and scary the test feels, the better we'll perform on it. And if we think about rowing overall, like what are you doing in practice every day? You're trying to get better every day, you're trying to learn something every day, get a little bit smarter on your technique, your goal setting, your pacing, and the 2K is no different. It's an opportunity for you to see how strategic you can be, how consistent you can be, and see how much you can push yourself, just like in practice. Athletes who are able to break through plateaus learn how to focus not on the end result score on the 2K, but the process to get there. They make sure they not only have a goal in place, but also a specific race plan. They practice that plan during practice pieces beforehand, therefore making 2K day just like any other workout. This strategy acts like an anchor for you as an athlete, something you can latch onto. The more you approach 2K day just like practice and vice versa, the more process-oriented you are, and the less you find yourself freaking out about what your split in the first 500 means about your test score overall. You'll show up more focused, more calm, more open to discovering what's possible, and more committed to your goal. That's all to say that when you loosen the grip that external pressure has on you, your performances start to match your preparation. And that's when you break through your plateau and start to hit PRs. Reason number 2 is poor pacing habits. The second major reason erg scores plateau is poor pacing and lack of clear strategy. This is one of the most misunderstood parts of 2K performance. Let me explain. Before a 2K, most rowers think loosely about pacing. You'll go out at a certain split that is like your goal split -1 for the first 500, then you'll go at goal +1 for the next 500, then at goal pace for the third 500 and -1 for the last 500, something like that. Rather than having clear markers during the test about whether you're on pace or not, you're just trying to see how close you can stay to a given split. Too often, what actually plays out is this. Logically, you think you just need to keep your average split during the piece under your goal and you'll hit your average. So like if your goal is 155, you just need to keep your average that shows up on the screen under 155 and your projected finish time under 740, and then you'll hit it. In your head, you think, all right, I gotta go out fast. I gotta stack some fast splits early on, knowing that the second half will be harder. So when my splits go up, hopefully they'll still average to my goal split by the end. What ends up happening when you do this is you run on adrenaline for the first 500, spike your lactate early, and spend the rest of the piece just trying to survive to the finish line. So there's good news and bad news. Bad news, this is not the best way to do a 2K. We know this because it's not the way the best rowers are doing their 2Ks. And honestly, if you didn't know that, it's not your fault. It's exactly what I did too. Quick pause here. If this is resonating with you and you want more clear guidance on getting faster on the erg, hit subscribe. I put out videos like this every week to help athletes and parents make sense of the 2K and college recruiting. Now for the good news. Pacing the 2K is a learned skill, both in how we think about it and plan for it, and also how we execute it. So this is something you can absolutely get better at. I know when I hit a plateau on the erg in high school, I had no idea that I was pacing it incorrectly. And it was only after learning what I was actually supposed to do that I broke the plateau and started hitting much faster splits. So the reality of the 2K is that you are best served by distributing your effort over time. So rather than going out too hard and training your nervous system to associate the 2K with panic and survival, you want to start the piece with control and clarity after your starting sequence. That means knowing before you ever sit down on the erg to take the test exactly what the first 15 strokes should feel like, and then also what base pace you're committed to holding through the rest of that first 500, and what split strategy you have in the middle of the piece too. The goal is not to bank good splits in the first half, it's to stay really efficient for as long as possible so that when the discomfort shows up in the third 500, because it always does, you're still in control at that moment and have a plan of attack of how to handle it. When pacing is done well, the first 500 almost feels boring. Not easy, but calm. You're working hard, but not panicking. The middle 1,000 is uncomfortable, but it's a discomfort that you recognize because you practice sitting there on that split. And then the last 500 becomes a place where you can actually compete instead of just hanging on for dear life to the finish line. When you go out too fast, you create urgency in your mind instead of confidence. Once that happens, decision-making gets sloppy and the piece starts driving you instead of the other way around. So how do you put this into practice? You get deliberate about your pacing in practice pieces. You practice that control after you've shifted off your starting sequence. You know what those splits feel like at the rate you're aiming for your 2K, and you have specific check-ins during the 2K that help guide your decision-making for the rest of the piece. When athletes learn how to pace the 2K properly, it stops feeling like a gamble. It starts feeling like a performance that they know how to execute, they feel confidence with. And very often when pacing clicks, plateaus that have lasted for months or even a year disappear almost immediately. Reason number 3 is identity lag. This is one that we often experience as rowers, but don't often acknowledge or talk about. So here's what I mean. Many rowers are physically capable of faster erg scores, but they haven't updated how they see themselves. They still think of themselves as a rower with an 8+ minute 2K erg score or a more than 2 minute 6K split. They don't associate themselves with the scores that they're aiming for. And so when your identity is tied to an old score, you're going to subconsciously steer back to it and feel scared of breaking past it. It's like you're holding yourself back even though you know you can do it. Your muscles might absolutely be strong enough to pull this new score, but your brain and your identity haven't caught up to what your body is capable of yet. All of a sudden, we make simple split differences feel way more daunting than they actually are. Like, I remember when I was breaking 8 minutes on the 2K, I had to mentally get over the idea that my splits were now sub 2 minute. Same thing with when I broke 2-minute splits on the 6K. Same thing when I went from 150s to 140s on the 2K. These thresholds artificially hold us back, even though we know we can do it. And what ends up happening is we pace ourselves too conservatively and we kind of panic when we see a split that doesn't feel like my splits on the screen, or we back off when it starts getting really uncomfortable. What actually fixes identity-based plateaus is remembering that the difference between, say, a 2-minute and a 2:01 split is the same as the difference between 1:59 and 2 minutes. It also helps to show yourself proof from your training pieces, from your workout log, that yes, you can actually hit these new scores, and yes, your body is actually capable of these. Breakthroughs often happen when your mind and your belief that yes, these are my new splits finally catch up to your level of fitness. Now, a quick note for the parents watching this. For parents, erg plateaus can be very frustrating to watch. You see your athlete going to practice every day, you see them working hard, you see their commitment, and yet the numbers on their erg scores are not changing as quickly as you might like. You also see them coming home defeated every time. Your instinct might be to push them harder or start adding pressure or comparing them to their teammates, but the most effective support is usually the opposite. Patience, emotional steadiness, and trusting the process, and then helping them get any extra support that they might need will go a lot further than adding pressure. I made a video about how parents can support their athletes, and I'll link that up here so that you can take a look if you're interested. So here's the net. Progress in rowing follows a predictable pattern. Athletes will get better in the beginning, then they'll have the potential to hit a plateau when they realize that what got them here won't get them there. And then if they're able to get strategic, they end up breaking through that plateau and going much faster on the erg. Erg breakthroughs are about preparing well and not letting the test get bigger than it is in your mind. It's about smart planning and goal setting and pacing. It's about developing mental strategies to handle it, and about getting your identity to catch up to what's possible for you. That's when erg testing gets really fun rather than being an experience to dread. So if your erg score has plateaued, don't assume you need more grit. Assume you need better alignment and better strategies. If you want help learning those strategies and building the system from pacing to mindset to planning, make sure you hit subscribe.